history had already begun to change before the final ball was struck. The tennis world arrived in Washington expecting another celebration for a proven champion, a player whose name had become almost synonymous with success on American hard courts. Instead, it witnessed the arrival of a fearless young woman who refused to believe that reputations could decide championships. Eala stepped onto the biggest stage of her career carrying not only a racket, but the hopes of an entire nation that had dreamed for generations of seeing one of its own lift a major professional trophy. When the dust finally settled, that dream was no longer a fantasy, it was reality. The roar inside the stadium echoed far beyond the capital of the United States. It crossed oceans, raced through cities and villages, filled homes, schools, tennis clubs, and crowded streets throughout the Philippines. Millions stared at their screens in disbelief as the impossible unfolded point after unforgettable point. The young left-hander who had once been described as a promising talent was no longer chasing history. She was writing it with every fearless swing of her racket. Standing across the net was Jessica Pegula, one of the most respected competitors in the sport, the tournament's top seed and a player with years of experience under the brightest lights. Everything pointed toward another chapter in Pegula's remarkable career. She had conquered elite opponents countless times before. She had lifted prestigious trophies. She had survived pressure that would have broken many others. Yet none of that mattered when she encountered a rival who played without fear, without hesitation, and without accepting that the established order had to remain untouched. Even before the championship match, whispers had spread throughout the tournament grounds. Opponents spoke quietly about the extraordinary confidence radiating from the young Filipina. Coaches exchanged nervous glances, analysts searched desperately for explanations. How had this rising star become so dangerous so quickly? Every round seemed to produce another upset, another breathtaking display of courage, another reminder that something extraordinary was happening. The road to the final had been anything but simple. Every opponent represented another mountain that many believed would finally halt the remarkable run. Instead, each challenge only strengthened Eala's belief that she belonged among the very best. She refused to retreat when rallies became brutal. She welcomed pressure instead of avoiding it. Every difficult moment became another opportunity to prove that rankings could never measure heart. The journey itself had begun many years earlier, long before television cameras followed her every move. There was a young girl striking tennis balls under the tropical sun, dreaming about courts she had never seen and championships that seemed impossibly distant. Every practice session demanded sacrifice. Every tournament required determination beyond her years. While many children imagined greatness, she built it stroke by stroke, hour after exhausting hour. Those sacrifices eventually carried her far from home. Training among world-class athletes required adapting to new cultures, new expectations, and relentless competition. Every practice match became a lesson, every defeat became fuel. Every victory whispered that perhaps the impossible was not impossible after all. Along the way came comparisons with legends whose names had become woven into tennis history. Rafael Nadal's relentless spirit, Roger Federer's graceful brilliance, Serena Williams' unmatched dominance, Andre Agassi's fearless aggression. Nobody suggested that Eala had already reached their level. Instead, observers noticed something familiar in her refusal to surrender. The greatest champions shared one defining quality. They believed before the rest of the world believed. Washington became the perfect stage for that belief to explode into reality. The championship did not unfold as a comfortable fairy tale. Pegula immediately reminded everyone why she had entered as the favorite. Her experience showed in every calculated serve, every composed return, every clever adjustment. She captured the opening set, forcing Eala to confront the possibility that dreams sometimes collapse just before the finish line. Reuters +1 Many young players would have panicked. Many would have started forcing impossible winners. Many would have allowed doubt to creep into their minds. Eala chose something entirely different. She chose patience, she chose courage, she chose belief. Then came the interruption that nobody expected. Dark clouds rolled over Washington, rain arrived. Play stopped, momentum froze, players disappeared into the locker rooms while thousands of anxious fans wondered what would happen next. Instead of one uninterrupted championship battle, the final would stretch across 2 different days, forcing both competitors to live with uncertainty longer than either had imagined. Reuters +1 for a veteran, delays can become frustrating. For a newcomer playing the biggest match of her life, they can become overwhelming. Yet when competition resumed, something extraordinary had changed. Eala walked back onto the court with even greater confidence. Every movement appeared sharper. Every return landed deeper. Every rally tilted further toward the fearless challenger. Pegula searched desperately for answers, but the momentum had completely shifted. The explosive left-handed forehand repeatedly pushed the American into uncomfortable positions. The serve grew more precise. The baseline exchanges increasingly belonged to the young Filipina, whose confidence seemed to grow with every point. The crowd sensed history approaching. Each winner produced louder cheers. Each break point carried greater tension. Each game felt heavier than the one before. Then came the avalanche. Eala stormed through the remainder of the second set before delivering a breathtaking final act that stunned everyone watching. The deciding set became an exhibition of fearless tennis. She overwhelmed Pegula without surrendering a single game, completing an unforgettable comeback with a commanding final score of 4-6, 6-4, 6-love. Reuters +1 Pegula stood at the baseline staring across the net, searching for the version of Eala she had expected to face. That player no longer existed. In her place stood a competitor transformed by belief, a champion discovering her highest level at precisely the moment when the pressure should have been crushing. Every point now carried the unmistakable feeling that destiny had chosen its side. The American fought with every ounce of experience she possessed. She attempted to slow the tempo. She changed directions with clever angles. She ventured toward the net whenever opportunities appeared. Nothing interrupted the relentless rhythm flowing from the opposite side of the court. Eala anticipated almost every pattern before it unfolded. Her feet seemed impossibly light, her reactions impossibly quick, her confidence impossibly complete. The rallies themselves became unforgettable spectacles. Forehand after forehand exploded into the corners. Backhands skimmed the lines with breathtaking precision. Defensive scrambles suddenly became offensive masterpieces. Balls that appeared unreachable somehow came floating back over the net, forcing Pegula to play one extra shot, then another until frustration slowly began to replace certainty. Every champion understands that tennis is played as much inside the mind as it is on the court. That invisible battle had completely shifted. Pegula had entered believing she simply needed to perform at her usual elite standard. Now she found herself confronting an opponent whose courage continued expanding with every passing minute. The pressure that had once rested on the shoulders of the young challenger quietly migrated across the net. The crowd could sense it. Every spectacular winner from Eala generated louder applause. Every determined fist pump ignited another wave of belief. Neutral spectators gradually found themselves swept into the story unfolding before their eyes. They were no longer simply watching a championship match. They were witnessing the birth of a new force in women's tennis. Across the Philippines, celebrations began long before the final point arrived. Families crowded around televisions. Restaurants paused their conversations, children wearing tennis shirts screamed with excitement after every remarkable rally. Former players watched in disbelief as the young woman they had supported for years stood on the edge of accomplishing something that had once seemed impossibly distant. This was never just another tournament. This was proof that talent born far from the traditional powerhouses of professional tennis could rise all the way to the summit. Every fearless swing carried generations of dreams. Every successful return challenged old assumptions. Every game won whispered the same unforgettable message: the world of tennis was changing. Commentators struggled to contain their excitement. Their voices grew louder with every astonishing exchange. Statistics alone could never explain what viewers were witnessing. Numbers could measure winners, unforced errors, service percentages, and break points. They could never measure courage. They could never calculate belief. They could never fully describe the emotional electricity flowing through the stadium. That was the quality separating extraordinary champions from ordinary competitors. When the pressure reached its highest point, Eala somehow became calmer. She refused to rush. She refused to celebrate too early. She remained completely absorbed in the next serve, the next return, the next opportunity. Championship tennis rewards discipline just as much as brilliance. Her discipline became almost impossible to ignore. The left-handed serve repeatedly opened the court. The first strike established immediate control. The second shot drove relentlessly toward the corners. Pegula found herself running farther and farther behind the baseline, constantly defending instead of attacking. For a player accustomed to dictating rallies, it became an exhausting experience. Meanwhile, Eala appeared to grow physically stronger with every passing game. The confidence radiating from her body language spread throughout the stadium. Children watching from the stands suddenly believed they were witnessing the beginning of a legendary career. Veteran journalists exchanged knowing smiles, recognizing those rare moments when a breakthrough victory becomes something much larger than a single trophy. The tennis community has witnessed unforgettable breakthroughs before. There was a time when seemingly unknown champions shocked the established order. There was a time when future legends first announced themselves to the world. Those moments are remembered forever because everyone watching realizes that they are witnessing more than an upset. They are witnessing the arrival of a new chapter. That unmistakable feeling filled the air in Washington. Every point carried increasing historical significance. Every game brought the finish line closer. Then came the final service game. Silence briefly settled across the stadium. Thousands of spectators held their breath. Pegula fought desperately to extend the contest, refusing to surrender despite the overwhelming momentum flowing against her. Champions never stop believing until the final point has been decided, and the American embodied that spirit with admirable determination. Yet destiny continued moving in only one direction. Eala stepped confidently behind the baseline. She bounced the ball with remarkable composure. She looked toward the opposite court without fear. The serve flew into the box. The rally exploded into motion. Power met precision. Patience met aggression. Determination met history. Then, in a single unforgettable instant, the final ball left Pegula's racket without finding safety. The match was over. For a heartbeat, everything seemed frozen. Eala remained motionless, almost unable to believe what had just happened. Then emotion rushed over her all at once. Joy, relief, disbelief, gratitude. She lifted both arms toward the sky as tears filled her eyes. Years of sacrifice, endless training sessions, lonely travel, painful defeats, and unwavering faith had all converged into one perfect moment. The stadium erupted. Her team leapt from their seats. Supporters wrapped themselves in Philippine flags. The celebration echoed across continents. The handshake at the net reflected the respect shared by two remarkable competitors. Pegula acknowledged the extraordinary level produced by her opponent, understanding better than anyone just how difficult it is to perform with such fearless conviction on championship day. That gesture carried enormous meaning. Great champions recognize greatness in others. Respect survives even the fiercest competition. As the trophy ceremony began, cameras captured faces filled with emotion throughout the crowd. Volunteers smiled proudly. Tournament officials applauded warmly. Fellow players watched from nearby, fully aware that the competitive landscape had just become far more dangerous. When Eala finally lifted the championship trophy above her head, the image instantly became one of the defining photographs of the season. The shining silver reflected the afternoon light. The cheers refused to fade. The smile on her face revealed both overwhelming happiness and quiet determination. Because deep inside, she already understood something important. This victory was not the destination. It was the beginning. The significance of that triumph extended far beyond one unforgettable afternoon in Washington. Trophies eventually gathered dust. Rankings continued to change. New tournaments arrive almost every week. Yet there are certain victories that permanently alter the direction of a sport, and this felt unmistakably like one of them. Young players throughout Asia suddenly possessed a living example that dreams could become reality. Children who had never imagined themselves competing with the world's elite now watched highlights of the championship over and over again. They copied the left-handed forehand. They practiced the determined fist pump. They imagined hearing their own names announced inside packed stadiums one day. Coaches everywhere noticed something equally important. Eala had not reached the top through overwhelming physical dominance alone. She succeeded because of discipline, because of resilience, because she embraced difficult moments instead of fearing them. Every junior player searching for inspiration could see that greatness remained available to those willing to outwork expectations. The conversations throughout the tennis world changed almost immediately. Who would be able to stop her? Could this remarkable breakthrough become the foundation for an even greater career? Was this the beginning of a sustained challenge against the biggest stars on the tour? Questions that had once sounded wildly optimistic suddenly became perfectly reasonable. Former champions joined the growing chorus of admiration. The qualities they praised extended beyond spectacular shot-making. They admired the composure, they admired the maturity, they admired the remarkable emotional balance displayed throughout one of the most demanding situations imaginable. Winning a major professional title requires more than talent. It requires surviving countless invisible battles, the fear of failure, the burden of expectation, the exhaustion of travel, the loneliness of competition, the endless cycle of preparation that begins again almost immediately after every victory. Eala had demonstrated that she possessed the mentality required to face those challenges. That realization may have frightened future opponents even more than the championship itself. Because physical skills can fluctuate, confidence can disappear, form can come and go, mental toughness endures. Tournament organizers also recognized the importance of what had unfolded before their eyes. The Washington event had crowned a champion whose story reached audiences far beyond traditional tennis circles. Newspapers carried dramatic headlines, television broadcasts replayed the decisive moments again and again. Social media exploded with celebrations from every corner of the globe. Support poured in from athletes representing entirely different sports. Basketball stars congratulated her, football players celebrated her determination. Olympians praised the courage required to overturn overwhelming expectations. National leaders expressed pride in the achievement. The victory had become larger than tennis. It had become a symbol of possibility. Behind the scenes, another reality quietly began taking shape. Sponsors who had watched her rise suddenly understood they were witnessing more than a talented young athlete. They saw charisma, they saw authenticity, they saw a competitor capable of inspiring millions. Commercial opportunities naturally followed remarkable success, but those closest to Eala understood that the greatest reward could never be measured by endorsement discussions or financial possibilities. The greatest reward was proving that years of sacrifice had carried genuine meaning. Every early morning practice, every heartbreaking defeat, every lonely hotel room, every exhausting training session, every difficult decision to keep believing despite temporary disappointment. All of it had led to this extraordinary breakthrough. Meanwhile, Jessica Pegula demonstrated the grace expected from one of the sport's finest professionals. Championship defeats always hurt, they linger. They replay endlessly inside a competitor's mind. Yet true champions respond with dignity. Pegula congratulated the better player on the day and acknowledged the extraordinary level required to produce such a comeback. That mutual respect elevated the occasion even further. Sport reaches its highest form when fierce competition concludes with genuine admiration. Fans remembered that image almost as vividly as the trophy lift itself, one champion recognizing another, one remarkable competitor welcoming a new rival into the highest level of the game. The symbolism resonated throughout professional tennis. No dynasty lasts forever. Every generation eventually gives way to the next. The legends who inspired millions once experienced breakthrough victories of their own. Roger Federer was once an ambitious newcomer. Rafael Nadal was once the fearless teenager challenging established greatness. Serena Williams was once the young talent determined to redefine expectations. Every extraordinary career begins with one defining statement. Washington had become that statement for Eala, yet perhaps the most beautiful part of the entire story remained the connection between champion and country. Throughout history, sporting triumphs have united people in extraordinary ways. Differences disappear, communities celebrate together. Hope spreads faster than fear. For the Philippines, this championship represented more than international recognition. It represented belief. Parents watching with their children suddenly spoke differently about impossible dreams. Young athletes felt encouraged to pursue ambitions that previously seemed unreachable. Local tennis clubs welcomed new faces eager to begin learning the sport. The ripple effect of one unforgettable victory promised to continue long after the applause faded. Years from now, whenever someone asks where the transformation truly began, countless voices will remember this remarkable championship. They will remember the fearless teenager who refused to surrender after losing the opening set. They will remember the rain delay that interrupted the drama but could not interrupt destiny. They will remember the breathtaking final set that left one of the world's finest players searching for answers. Most of all, they will remember the overwhelming sense that they had witnessed history unfolding in real time, because championships come and go. Records are eventually broken, new stars inevitably emerge. But certain moments become timeless. Certain victories become permanent landmarks in the story of a sport. Eala's unforgettable triumph in Washington belongs among those moments. It announced the arrival of a champion whose courage proved stronger than expectation, whose resilience proved greater than pressure, and whose belief inspired millions who had never before imagined that such a day could arrive. As the lights slowly dimmed over the championship court and the celebrations continued long into the evening, one truth echoed louder than every cheer that had filled the stadium. The journey was never simply about lifting one trophy. It was about opening a door. A door for future dreamers, a door for future champions. A door for every young player willing to believe that rankings do not define destiny, reputations do not decide outcomes, and history is written by those courageous enough to challenge it. The tennis world will continue moving forward. New tournaments will crown new champions. Fresh rivalries will capture global attention. But the memory of that extraordinary week in Washington will forever remind fans that greatness often arrives when nobody expects it, carried by a fearless young competitor who dared to believe before anyone else did. And if this astonishing championship proved anything at all, it was that the story of Eala had only just begun, with every future match offering another opportunity to inspire, to challenge, and to remind the sporting world that impossible dreams are often only impossible until the very moment someone transforms them into unforgettable reality.